Hey, welcome to Myers ASMR. It's so good to see you as usual. I hope you're feeling well. Relax, relax. Shake off that stress. Shake it off. Shake off that mess. Hey, they are where they are. And where they are is perfect. And where I am right now is perfect. Guess why? Because I just tried my hand at some chicken and broccoli. Let's have at it. I have not tasted it yet, so I'm super excited. Oh, look at that. Okay, I'll admit this is low effort. This is soy sauce chicken that I made previously and had frozen and forgot about it for like a month. So I said, you know what? I got some broccoli in the fridge that I need to eat. So let me just put the two together. So I just add a little hoisin sauce and cooked it all together. But I'm not a real fan of hoisin sauce by itself. I didn't want to add any extra soy sauce since I already had soy sauce on the chicken, but this could have used some soy sauce because it just tastes like hoisin sauce. You know when you're not hungry, but you feel like you need to eat something, so you're not hungry later? Yeah, that's how I feel right now. Just trying to get out ahead of the hunger. Also trying to make sure I have an appetite for dinner later. This is that end piece of sourdough. Well, there's not much you can do with it, but hey, make a piece of toast, right? So good. I heard the cats calling loudly outside, so I'm gonna give them the rest of this chicken. They're the street cats that people in this building feed. She must have had like 3 or 4 sets of babies by now. Hey, if you've got any products you want me to try on camera, let me know. Let's talk. This is filtered water with fresh squeezed lemon. I bought a water filter by Pure, and it's also a lead filter. It was only like $32 on Amazon. Water with lemon tastes so good. Excuse me. Well, hey, let's pick up with the Great Gatsby. Let's see what's going on with this story. This book has just fallen apart with each page. I don't even know where I am anymore because the whole thing, every time I turn a page, it comes undone. Alright. Her glance left me and sought the lighted top of the steps where 3 o'clock in the morning, a neat, sad little waltz of that year was drifting out the open door. After all, in the very casualness of Gatsby's party, there were romantic possibilities totally absent from her world. What was it up there in the song that seemed to be calling her back inside? What would happen now in the dim, incalculable hours? Perhaps some unbelievable guest would arrive, a person infinitely rare and to be marveled at. Some authentically radiant young girl who, with one fresh glance at Gatsby, one moment of magical encounter, would blot out those 5 years of unwavering devotion. I stayed late that night. Gatsby asked me to wait until he was free, and I lingered in the garden until the inevitable swimming party had run up, chilled and exalted from the black beach until the lights were extinguished in the guest rooms overhead. When he came down the steps at last, the tanned skin was drawn unusually tight on his face, and his eyes were bright and tired. She didn't like it, he said immediately. Of course she did. She didn't like it, he insisted. She didn't have a good time. He was silent, and I guessed at his unutterable depression. I feel far away from her, he said. It's hard to make her understand. You mean about the dance? The dance? He dismissed all the dances he had given with a snap of his fingers. Old sport, the dance is unimportant. He wanted nothing less of Daisy than that she should go to Tom and say, I never loved you. After she had obliterated 4 years with that sentence, they could decide upon the more practical measures to be taken. One of them was that after she was free, they were to go back to Louisville and be married from her house, just as if it were 5 years ago. And she doesn't understand, he said. She used to be able to understand. We'd sit for hours. He broke off and began to walk up and down a desolate path of fruit rinds and discarded favors and crushed flowers. I wouldn't ask too much of her, I ventured. You can't repeat the past. Can't repeat the past, he cried incredulously. Why, of course you can. He looked around him wildly, as if the past were lurking here in the shadow of his house, just out of reach of his hand. I'm going to fix everything, just the way it was before, he said, nodding determinedly. She'll see. He talked a lot about the past and I gathered that he wanted to recover something, some idea of himself, perhaps, that had gone into loving Daisy. His life had been confused and disordered since then, but if he could once return to a certain starting place and go over it slowly, he could find out what that thing was. One autumn night 5 years before, they had been walking down the street when the leaves were falling, and they came to a place where there were no trees, and the sidewalk was white with moonlight. They stopped here and turned toward each other. Now it was a cool night with that mysterious excitement in it which comes at the 2 changes of the year. The quiet lights in the houses were humming out into the darkness, and there was a stir and bustle among the stars. Out of the corner of his eye, Gatsby saw that the blocks of the sidewalk really formed a ladder and mounted to a secret place above the trees. He could climb to it if he climbed alone, and once there he could suck on the pap of life, gulp down the incomparable milk of wonder. His heart beat faster and faster as Daisy's white face came up to his own. He knew that when he kissed this girl, and forever wed his unutterable visions to her perishable breath, his mind would never romp again like the mind of God. So he waited, listening for a moment longer to the tuning fork that had been struck upon a star. Then he kissed her. At his lips' touch, she blossomed for him like a flower, and the incarnation was complete. Through all he said, even though his appalling sentimentality, I was reminded of something. An elusive rhythm, a fragment of lost words that I had heard somewhere a long time ago. For a moment, a phrase tried to take shape in my mouth, and my lips parted like a dumb man's, as though there was more struggling upon them than a wisp of startled air. But they made no sound, and what I had almost remembered was uncommunicable forever. That's just some heavy prose right there. I mean, sometimes you just gotta stop it and ponder. Whew. Let me go on. This is chapter 7. It was when curiosity about Gatsby was at its highest that the lights in his house failed to go on one Saturday night. And as obscurely as it had begun, his career as Trimalchio was over. Only gradually did I become aware that the automobiles which turned expectantly into his drive stayed for just a minute and then drove sulkily away. Wondering if he were sick, I went over to find out. An unfamiliar butler with a villainous face squinted at me suspiciously from the door. Is Mr. Gatsby sick? Nope. After a pause, he added, Sir, in a dilatory, grudging way. I hadn't seen him around, and I was rather worried. Tell him Mr. Carroway came over. Who? He demanded rudely. Carroway. Carroway? All right, I'll tell him. Abruptly, he slammed the door. My friend informed me that Gatsby had dismissed every servant in his house a week ago and replaced them with half a dozen others who never went into West Egg Village to be bribed by the tradesmen, but ordered moderate supplies over the telephone. The grocery boy reported that the kitchen looked like a pigsty, and the general opinion in the village was that the new people weren't servants at all. Next day, Gatsby called me on the phone. Going away? I inquired. No, old sport. I hear you fired all your servants. I wanted somebody who wouldn't gossip. Daisy comes over quite often in the afternoons. So the whole caravansary had fallen in like a card house at the disapproval in her eyes. There's some people Wolfsheim wanted to do something for. They're all brothers and sisters. They used to run a small hotel. I see. He was calling up at Daisy's request. Would I come to lunch at her house tomorrow? Miss Baker would be there. Half an hour later, Daisy herself telephoned and seemed relieved to find that I was coming. Something was up. And yet I couldn't believe that they would choose this occasion for a scene, especially for the rather harrowing scene that Gatsby had outlined in the garden. The next day was broiling, almost the last, certainly the warmest of the summer. As my train emerged from the tunnel into sunlight, only the hot whistles of the National Biscuit Company broke the simmering hush at noon. The straw seats of the car hovered on the edge of combustion. The woman next to me perspired delicately for a while into her white shirtwaist, and then, as her newspaper dampened under her fingers, lapsed despairingly into deep heat with a desolate cry. Her pocketbook slapped to the floor. Oh my, she gasped. I picked it up with a weary bend and handed it back to her, holding it at arm's length, and by the extreme tip of the corners to indicate that I had no designs upon it. But everyone nearby, including the woman, suspected me just the same. Hot, said the conductor to familiar faces. Some weather. Hot, hot, hot. Is it hot enough for you? Is it hot? Is it? My commutation ticket came back to me with a dark stain from his hand. That anyone should care in this heat, whose flushed lips he kissed, whose head made damp the pajama parket over his heart. Through the hall of the Buchanan's house blew a faint wind, carrying the sound of the telephone bell out to Gatsby and me as we waited at the door. The master's body, roared the butler into the mouthpiece. I'm sorry, madam, but we can't furnish it. It's far too hot to touch this noon. What he really said was, yes, I'll see. He set down the receiver and came toward us, glistening slightly, to take our stiff straw hats. Madame expects you in the salon, he cried needlessly, indicating the direction. In this heat, every extra gesture was an affront to the common store of life. The room, shadowed well with awnings, was dark and cool. Daisy and Jordan lay upon an enormous couch, like silver idols weighing down their own white dresses against the singing breeze of the fans. We can't move, they said together. Isn't that just weird? I'm gonna leave it here. Talking about some heat, yeah. I know what it's like not to have air conditioning in the hot summer. I was never really a fan of owning an air conditioner until my boyfriend bought me one. He said he couldn't bear to be over there if I didn't have an air conditioner, so. And even then, like, it was so loud, I just stopped turning it on and just used my fan. Hey, remember that they are where they are, and it's just perfect where they are. If you like what I'm doing here, like and subscribe, donate to the cause. Catch me in the next video, and may you, yes, you find lasting happiness.